some of the stuff based on the logics that we define. Let's say, for example, um, you have a field called tax. You have a price field and then you have a tax field. Now, if you are able to put a logic into the tax field, then you can auto calculate the tax. If you have a logic like tax is always going to be 10% of the price, then it can be automated, correct? But if I do not have a logic behind that, then I cannot automate it, correct? I can define instructions, I can uh, do certain things automatically, update a field or maybe perform any other action automatically if I have a clearly defined logic behind it. All right. So that's the reason why this section which we are going to talk about is automation using the business logics. Under this, we are going to we are going to talk about four things. One is formulas, second is validation rules, third is workflow rules, and the fourth is approval process. So we have formulas, we have validation rules, we have workflow rules, and then we have approval process, right? So we'll start with formula and we will understand each one by one. So what is formula? Formula is basically a field type in Salesforce. When you create a new field, you must have seen there's a field type called formula field type. So if you use the field type formula, then instead of uh, the user entered value into that field, you can automatically populate the value of that field based on some formula, correct? So a simple example is what I was just talking. If I have a price and if I have a tax field and I want the tax to be 10% of the price always, then I can make that field as a formula field. So it will automatically calculate the value of the tax based on the price, reference from the price. Okay. Now there's something that you might have seen in Microsoft Excel. In Excel, you can put the formulas. Similarly, we can have formula fields in Salesforce as well. All right. So let's go ahead and create a formula field in order to understand it a little better. Okay, so here we are. This is the page. Now, let me go to the opportunity object. In opportunity, we already have a field called amount, correct? We already have a field called amount, right? Let's say I just want to have one more field here called tax, and that should be 10% of the amount automatically calculated. This is a manual entry field. So whatever value entered here, tax should be 10% of it. Let's say that's what my requirement is. So for formula, all that you have to do is you just have to create the formula field, go to setup. Since you want to create a field on the standard object, you have to go to customize. You want to create it on opportunity object, just go to opportunities, click on fields, and here you have to click on new. Okay, this time the field type has to be formula because you're going to create it as a formula field. Okay, so this formula field is going to be a read-only field that derives its value from a formula expression you define. Okay, the formula field is updated when any of the source fields change. So this will automatically get updated based on the source field. So that's fine. What is the field label and field name that we're going to give? Field label is field
Tax, right?
label is tax. Okay, and what will be the return type?
Return type is currency.
It should be currency in this case because the tax will be, let's say, okay, in case you want decimal places, you can quote. If you don't want, you can just make it zero. That's it. Now, all that we have to do is we just have to go ahead and write the formula, the exact logical expression. But how should it calculate the tax? So, you can just click on the advanced formula here. This is the formula editor page that you have. Just go and click on the advanced formula. Click on insert field. Which field you want to insert? Amount, right? You want to reference it from the amount. So see, your tax equals amount into 0.1. This should make it 10% of the amount, correct? That's it. So tax is equals to amount into 0.1. This will make it 10% of the amount. Once you have written your formula expression, just go and click on check syntax. Scroll down, no syntax error, absolutely okay. Go ahead and click on next. Next, save. Okay, so now I have a field called tax and the value of the tax field is auto calculated based on the amount. Let's go to an opportunity and check it if it's working fine.
Okay.
10% of the amount. You see this? So that's how simple it is to put a formula here in Salesforce. So now what will happen? This formula field
Mm,
will automatically get calculated based on the source field. The source field here is
mm,
amount. Correct?
okay. Yeah, okay.
Alright. So that's the first thing. Now, this was a simple straight formula. Tax is 10% of the amount. Alright. Now let's make it a little more complex. Now next requirement is if amount is if amount is greater than 100,000, tax is 20%, else tax is 10%. Okay, so let's say this is what my requirement is. If the amount of the opportunity is more than 100,000, then the tax calculated should be 20%. If it is less than 100,000, then the tax calculated should be 10%. Let's say that's what the requirement is now. Now what do you do for that? Very simple. All I have to do is go to the same formula field and put an if logic there. Customize opportunities fields, edit the tax field. Okay, and now we have to put in if logic here. Okay, how many of you have done a bit of formula in Excel? Anyone who has written formulas in Microsoft Excel?
No, no, sir. No, sir.
No. known as written Microsoft Excel formulas. So anyhow, uh, here in Salesforce, along with these formulas, we have these functions. Okay. So now, since I want to use that if logic, I have to use a logical function. So you have function, mathematical functions, logical text functions, everything is there. So logical function if needs to be used. All right. So what is the syntax for the if function? Logical test. It should have
Yeah,
three
if this
sections. Logical test. What will be the value if the logical test is true? What will be the value if the logical test is false?
false.
So my if function should be like this. What is my logical test? Amount greater than 100,000
Mm. Mm.
or zero. Yes. Value if it's true and value if it's false. So value if it is true will be amount into 0.2 and value if it is false will be amount into 0.1. Check syntax. Okay. Now there is a syntax error. What is the syntax error? This was not required. No, I don't need this one. No syntax error. Correct. So that's what my formula is. Now if the amount is greater than 100,000, then the tax will be 20% of the amount, else tax will be 10% of the amount. That's what we have. Save it. And it is done. So this particular uh, field is ready. Now if you go to any opportunity and check the tax field, you will see it depends on the amount. So in this case, amount is 235,000, which is more than 100,000. So your tax calculated should be 20% of it. Yes, it is 20%, 47,000. Right? Reduce it to let's say 80,000. Save it. The tax calculated becomes 10%. Got it? So this is how simple it is. Alright, now on the same formula editor window where you are actually editing the formulas, you will see that there are a lot of functions listed there, correct? So for people who have not done the functions and formulas earlier in Microsoft Excel, you have to spend let's say a couple of hours on the functions. And what exactly you have to do, I'll tell you. All that you need to do is just need to go to that particular formula field. Okay, so once you are here on this field, if you click on any, if you select any function, first thing is like the if function. The moment you select any of the function, you have a short description of that function here. how that works and everything. Okay, a little detail about the syntax is given here. Okay, if you are not okay with that, if it's not working fine, then all that you have to do is you just have to click on help on this function. Okay, so if you are not happy with this much of description and you want to understand it a little more, all that you have to do is just click on help on this function. It will take you to a page where you will have a detailed description of that function along with a small example. And that's what will help you understand the functions. Now, okay, first of all, let's have a look into this. See, see the if function you have along with example, when to use it, what, and all that stuff. Okay, so you will have an example where you can use it, and that's a good thing. All right. Now, small thing here is that if you are going through all the functions one by one, then you will end up spending a lot of time and you will not learn a lot of things. Okay, so as general understanding will be to work on the simple functions which make sense to you, which you understand what it can be. All right, so don't try to start working with every formula or every function. Okay, so that's something which we should not do. We should just try and see, okay, fine, for text whatever you can understand. Hyperlink, okay, I think I can understand this. Find, I think I can understand this. Length, I can understand. Okay, so whatever you can understand, you should take those and you should start reading those. Okay, don't try to read every function or work on every function, because then it will be too confusing for you to understand the functions. All right, in case you have done Microsoft Excel functions earlier, I don't think you'll have any difficulties understanding these functions. If you want, you guys can spend a few hours, maybe if not today or tomorrow, over the next weekend, you can spend a few hours working with Microsoft Excel functions also. Right? It's good to know Microsoft Excel functions if you're working with Salesforce. A lot of times you will be required to do things outside Salesforce using Microsoft Excel. We have seen, right, when we do data import and export, almost everything goes into the Excel,
Mm-hmm.
right? So if you have to do
Mm-hmm.
perform any activity like small data cleansing or small bit of analysis, for all those things you will need Excel. So if you have not done any bit of Excel and you're planning to get into Salesforce, you need to spend a few hours on the Microsoft Excel, especially the functions part. So maybe the next weekend spend one full day on Microsoft Excel and functions. Try to write the functions. That will help you for formulas in Salesforce, and that will help you to be good in Excel also, because you cannot get into Salesforce without a knowledge of Microsoft Excel. And that's something which is pretty much understood. No job description you will find that they are asking for Microsoft Excel, but that's a bare minimum expected. All right. Okay. So, okay with the formula thing? Do we have any doubt or question here with the formula thing? Let me know.
No, no, it's clear.
Try doing a few more simple, small examples, and then keep gradually keep on increasing the level of complexity. Just try
Mm-hmm.
to do a little more complex functions, and you should be able to work it out. Now, coming to the next thing, validation rule. Okay. So the next thing is a validation rule. Right. So what do we need to do in the validation rule? For the validation rule, all that we have to do is we just have to define, this is a rule to validate data before it is saved. So whatever data is getting into the database, validation tool can be used for validating the data before that data gets saved into the database. Alright, so how does that work? Um, for example, Okay, if I take the example of this opportunity, right? Let's say I have a logic here. Again, here there has to be a logic. Let's say I have a logic here that the amount of an opportunity cannot be more than 1 million. The maximum amount of an opportunity can be 1 million, not more than that, right? Now, I can define a validation rule to make sure that no one is entering the amount of an opportunity more than 1 million. The moment someone tries to enter an opportunity which has an amount more than a million, it will throw an error saying that this is not allowed, right? So a lot of times this is something which you would need to do, which you need to put. So let's go ahead and do the validation rule. So this is a rule which needs to be defined. Now we are going to define the same rule for opportunity. That if the amount is greater than a million, then throw an error. So go to opportunities. Okay, this time you don't need to go to fields. This time you just need to go to the validation rules. Under opportunities, there is validation rules where it is. Okay, click on new validation rule. All right. So for validation rule, you just have to go and say VR1. Just give it a name. Make sure your rule is active. If it is not active, it will not work. Right. So anytime you want your rule to get executed, you have to keep it active. Okay. Why have they given an option of making it active? Because sometimes you just want to define the rule, but you don't want that rule to work. Let's say you're creating a rule and you just don't want to deploy this rule right now. You might want to deploy it after a month or so. In that case, you should not make it active. Okay. So we want this rule to work, so let me make it active. Okay. And under the validation rule, you have two things to be defined. One is your error condition formula, and the other one is your error message. All right. The first one is error condition formula, and the second one is error message. So in the error condition formula, all that you have to do is you just have to put the error condition with the help of a formula expression. Error condition is amount greater than 1 million. This is the error condition, correct? And what will be the error message? Amount cannot be. This is where you can write any message that you want to display to your end users. Amount cannot be greater than 1 million. And just click on save. That's it. So your rule name is defined, condition is defined, error message is defined. Correct. Now go to opportunities, click on a certain opportunity and try to edit it, make it more than a million. Now when you try to save it, see you get an error. It does not get saved. Amount cannot be greater than 1 million. Got it? So that's the validation rule. So it's pretty much different from a formula. Formula is a field type. It's used for automatically calculating the values of a field where you have a predefined logic. Validation rule is basically for avoiding errors, right? So the manual errors can be avoided. That's the basic logic behind using the validation rule. We're trying to avoid the manual errors. Instead of allowing all the values into the database, certain values which should not be allowed, those are being restricted from the validation rule, right? So this is a rule. You can keep it active or you can deactivate this rule. Let's say you have created this rule, like this is the rule that your company follows, that amount cannot be greater than 1 million, okay? But now for next 1 month, you are actually going to deal with some really big clients and you are going to get bigger opportunities, okay? And you feel that now for next 1 month, opportunities which are more than 1 million should be allowed. The reason can be anything, okay? So though your validation rule is working like that, but for a month you just want to allow, you just want to make an exception to your validation rule for 1 month, okay? In that case, what will you do? In that case, all that you have to do is you just have to go ahead and make sure that you are deactivating the validation rule completely. Okay, so that's the reason why we have the activate and deactivate option in the validation rule. So you just have to go to your validation rule, edit, it's currently active, just make it inactive, save it. Now this validation rule is not going to work. So if I go to an opportunity now, I click on this, and if I go ahead and edit the value of this, I made it 8 million, it got saved, right? Because your validation rule is inactive, not working. Right? Okay. Let me put one more logic in the validation rule. Um, okay, this was a straightforward one. Now let's say my validation rule logic is that if opportunity is from education industry and is amount is greater than 500,000, then throw error. All right. So if the opportunity is from education industry and amount is greater than 500,000, then I wanted to throw error. Okay. So that's what we want this to do. So how will that happen? You just have to go ahead and edit the validation rule criteria. Go to the same validation rule. Go to setup. And the customize opportunity validation rule. Just have a look at the navigation once again. Click on edit. Okay, now I have two things to check. Amount greater than 5,000, not 5,000, 500,000. And
Yeah, name also, opportunity name.
and what? The other one?
The
Industry is
opportunity name, whether it is from education industry or not.
yes. So now industry is not a field on opportunity. The other thing that you have to understand, there's no field called industry and opportunity. Now how do you do that? Let's go ahead and check, is there a field called industry and opportunity?
No,
No. Then what are we talking about when I say that if the opportunity is from
opportunity.
industry, education industry, then what do I mean? What are we?
Maybe opportunity name,
Opportunity
whether
name is just a field, right?
it's okay.
What I'm saying is there is no field called industry. How will you understand whether that opportunity
No.
is from which industry?
Hmm. So we need to create a field called industry. No?
No,
I don't have an idea.
no.
Hmm. Sorry. No, I don't have idea. Yeah.
So
Education.
how will you understand the industry of an opportunity, Venkat? What do we mean when I say that opportunities from education industry or which industry? How do you understand that? Venkat, you there? Cannot hear you, man. The microphone is working fine. Not sure. Think there's some issue with your microphone. Yeah, yeah. Now I
Hello?
can hear you. Hello. Yeah.
Jeet, I guess there could be a field called education or something.
Industry. No. Opportunity is connected to account. Account has a field called industry. Got it? That's gonna be the logic. Opportunity is a child of account. Account has a field industry. So when I'm talking about opportunities from which industry, I'm actually talking about the industry of the parent account. Got it? So that's what we have to do. How do we put the rule for that? Insert field. Now opportunity does not have any field called industry. Search it, you will not find it. But it is in the account. So it has a field called account. From account, you will go to the industry and search for it. Got it? Yes. So from
Jeet, whenever
opportunity,
we make any changes in these formulas,
validation rule. This one is validation rule or formula. Yeah, good. Yeah, you were asking something.
yeah, Jeet, my question is, whenever we make any changes in the validation rules or formulas, does that
Mm-hmm.
automatically get applied to all
Existing ones.
existing
Yes.
accounts?
Yes.
Okay.
See, validation rule, for validation rule, it's not that much applicable because validation rule is just like a rule which is not going to affect the data anyhow. Okay. Next time when the record gets updated, then it's going to affect that record. The record which is already saved, it's not going to affect that record. Got it? But formula, every time you update it, it's actually going to go and update all the database, existing data also. Got it? So
Okay.
validation
And
rule gets executed only when a save operation is happening. A record is getting saved. Got it? So now
okay.
I,
And
right?
if we have to set up 2 or 3 rules in the same thing, how do we do that?
Two or three
The
validation rules.
same. Yeah, I'm talking about the validation rules. If we have to set up 2 or 3 rules in the same thing,
So that's what
how
we
do
are
we
doing in
separate
this
them?
example. See, what we are doing is we are checking if the amount is greater than 50,000 and industry equals education. Quick syntax check, no errors. That's what we're doing. These are two criteria that we are putting. You can define multiple rules also on the same object. Under validation rules, you have created one rule, you can create another rule also. But till the time you are able to put it in the same validation rule, I would suggest don't go for multiple rules. Till the time it's manageable on the single validation rule, don't go for other rules. All right.
Okay.
Now the challenge with defining two conditions Now these two conditions will always work together, that's one. But if you have two different conditions which need to get executed individually, then you can create two different rules. If you have a situation
Okay, how
where
is
you
it
might need
separated?
to turn off one of them and the other one still should be working, then you need to define two rules. That's how it is.
And how is it separated, Jeet? Do we have to press an enter, or if we have to define another rule in the same box?
No, no. It's not about defining multiple rules in the same box. This is one rule and this is the criteria for that rule. Okay. So here
Hmm.
it's just one expression which you can put. You cannot put two expressions. Once you have
Okay.
created one rule, the second rule needs to be created again using the new option.
Okay, got it.
Save this. If you want to create another one, just click on new. Right. So that's how our validation rule will work. So now we have put a validation rule where I said that if the industry is education and amount is 500,000, then throw error. So for other industries, it will throw an error if the amount exceeds 1 million. But for education industry specifically, it is going to throw error for 500,000. Right. So that's how it is. So you can define your rule depending on what your requirement is, and that's how it's going to work. Clear? Let me know if there is any doubt or question on the validation rule part. Simple, right?
Clear.
Okay. So the other day we were working on this particular warehouse application, right? And I think I gave you the data structure for the warehouse application. Yep. So we were talking about the warehouse application. So what I want you to do is I want you to use the same formula and validation rules on the warehouse application, at some places. Right, wherever you feel like you should be able to put those formulas and validation. Okay, just try thinking any situation, try to put any formula, maybe if there is a price, try to put tax and then try to put some logic into the tax. You initially need to start with these small examples and then you can actually start getting into the complex ones. Okay, I'm also going to give you a PDF which has a lot of examples for the validation rules and the formulas. All right, so but before that I just want you guys to start with small examples and spend some time with that help for this function that I showed. Right, if you are aware of the functions, how the functions work, I don't want you to, again, as I said earlier, I don't want you to go through all the functions. Just take any 10 to 15 functions of your choice. That's what you have to do. That's it. 10 to 15 functions of your choice. One can be if, one can be a mathematical, one can be a text function, one can be a date function. This way, just pick 10 to 15 of your choice which you find the most simple. And then if you learn 15 functions, you are good. Then you can use any other function because you have the understanding. Correct? So that's what your task is going to be. All right. Now there's a small assignment that I want you guys to do right now. Create a validation rule. Okay, let me say validation rule. I just want to make sure any lead without email should give error, and the error message should be email is required. So anytime a lead is being entered which does not have an email address, I want this to throw error and the error should be that email is required. Can we quickly create this validation rule for the lead object? Just a quick activity.